Good afternoon. Welcome to Kansas City Council Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, October 21st, 2025. Melissa, may we have roll call, please?
Yes. Council President Corr?
Here.
Councilmember Boyce?
Here.
Councilmember Boyd?
Here.
Councilmember Fincher?
Here.
Councilmember Larmer?
Here.
Councilmember Michaud?
Here.
And Councilmember Troutner?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Next up, we have agenda approval. Any changes to the agenda? If none, may I have a motion, please?
So move. Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. And we have approval of minutes.
So move. Second.
All right, motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we have received payment of bills in our email. May I have a motion, please?
So move. Second.
All right, motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you so much. Okay, next up, we have ordinance prohibiting restrictive covenants related to grocery stores, drugstores, and pharmacy operations. And we have our city attorney, Tammy White, and Anshul Baga. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, Council. I have the easiest part of this presentation is I just want to take an opportunity to introduce you to Anshul. As you may know, the city reorganized how we do risk management services in May of this year. So at that time, then we sort of split off risk management. Risk management claims came over to our office, and we were given the position that was previously filled by Elaine Wee. And we reclassified that position to an attorney position, which allowed us to secure a senior attorney, Anshul Baga, who came to us from 10 years as a rising star down in the city of Denver. And so he arrived in our office in mid-August and has been just hitting it out of the park ever since. So we are so blessed to have him on staff. So wanted to take this opportunity to welcome Anshul, but introduce him to you. And then this is going to be his first presentation to you tonight.
Did you warn him about us?
I did. I told him how wonderful you all are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. Good evening, members of council. Anshul Baga, City Attorney's Office. The ordinance that you have in front of you does two things. So it would make it unlawful for private parties to prohibit the use of land in the city for use as a grocery store, pharmacy, or drugstore. The ordinance would also prohibit private parties from purchasing or leasing land and then doing so with the intent to withhold the land and restrain trade for use as a grocery store, drugstore, or pharmacy. The ordinance contains a purpose clause, a codified purpose clause also, that explains that this practice frustrates the city's long-term land use goals, creates vacant storefronts and shops, artificially restrains trade. The ordinance contains a couple of enforcement provisions. The ordinance would state that any of those private clauses that are agreed to by parties would be void and unenforceable. And then it contains some enforcement provisions that the prohibitions could be enforced by going to municipal court, so issuing a citation for a civil infraction or a criminal infraction. Also, code enforcement process, that process for enforcement. And it contains another clause that allows the city to preserve all other available legal remedies. That provision is things like being able to sue private parties via declaratory judgment action, seeking an injunction in superior court, things like that. As contained in the motion sheet, this ordinance is very similar to other ordinances passed in a couple of other jurisdictions, including Bellingham, Washington, Chicago, Illinois, Washington, D.C., etc. And with that, I think that's about it I have for the details. A couple of other notes in terms of procedure for tonight. So the ordinance is being asked for adoption on an emergency basis, so it would be effective immediately, which requires a unanimous vote, as you all know. And if it does pass unanimously at COW, it will move on to the council agenda for this evening. And with that, I'd welcome some questions.
Thank you, Anshul, and you did great. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm actually very excited about this ordinance. I think we also probably need to look at something about vacant properties in the future. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with Councilmember Boyce, followed by the Councilmember Larmer.
So the question I'm going to ask anyway, is this retroactive? Can we make this retroactive or what?
The ordinance is not retroactive. The ordinance would only apply to covenants that are executed on and after the date of the effectiveness. Whether we can make it retroactive is sort of a different, more difficult question. There would be some legal issues with making it retroactive. I'll save the details for that for a separate
I
conversation.
figure I asked anyway, but thank you.
Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you. So one question I've had, and I've been asked it and I didn't have the answer, is why did they do this in the first place? If they're vacating the building, what did they care if another grocery store comes in?
So I may kick a portion of that question to Bill Ellis with ECD, but from my understanding, the reason that they do this is because they want to restrict competition in a particular geographic location so that they can preserve the operation of their more global network. So restrict competition here so that sales over here are not affected by another grocery store opening up over here. I don't know if Bill Ellis may have something to add.
I actually don't have a lot to add to that. It's basically, that's short and sweet. It is standard practice for big supermarket chains when they vacate a store and they sell the property to put a covenant restriction preventing it. And you've seen this in Kent before, where 24-hour fitness is now where Albertsons used to be. When Albertsons merged with Safeway, Safeway's across the street, they have an interest in preserving market share.
I guess I understand it when there's something like still owned by that company across the street, but in the case where it's not, I guess it just wasn't making sense to me why they would care.
Yeah, well, maybe you can speak to this a little bit too, but just that they write in such a way that it's contingent upon anything else within a certain radius of an existing store. And they usually are pretty generous with what that radius looks like. Sometimes there's an expiration date, but not always. It sunsets at a certain time, or it could be perpetual. It can be run with the land. There's also a secondary market of trading in this. So I'm a retailer, I'm an owner of shopping centers, and maybe I have another one of your business leases somewhere else, and you have a desire for parking stalls. Let's horse trade on the agreements of these other things. So it's like a secondary market in these restrictions that sometimes resolve themselves without the broader public knowing. But it is very typical for shopping centers when they set up to put in place covenant restrictions covering all sorts of things, whether it's parking lot fields, or we want to make sure we only have this type of retail operation and not competitors, or what have you. So that practice evolves over time to also say, when we vacate the property, make sure that we leave the ground in such a way that we're not competing with, or our competitors don't occupy and take the market share away from us.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you. I'm going to be supporting this because we know that we already have, well, Fred Meyer, there were things there that you couldn't buy other places, but they could be doing this to send business to their West Hill store, for instance, or to another one, leaving the people who live in that area, the East Hill folks, leaving them in the lurch. You know, so to have another grocery store in there would only benefit our residents. So I am going to be supporting this. We have a lot of apartments up there. People who don't have transportation, is at least their own transportation. Carrying groceries on a bus, if you have a bunch of kids, is not an easy task. So we need to have to make sure that if another grocer did come in, that it would at least be available to them.
Any other comments or questions? Also, would we be able to implement it for Fred Meyer's?
Thanks for the question, Council President. As far as we know, that there is no current restrictive covenant on that location,
Okay.
so this would apply to anything that was executed after the effectiveness of this.
Okay, thank you. That was the question clarification. All right, no other questions? I'll read the motion. I move to adopt ordinance number 4523, enacting a new chapter 10.04 in the Kent City Code entitled Prohibition on Restrictive Land Use Practices to prohibit restrictive covenants related to grocery store, drugstore, and pharmacy operations.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you so much. This will be going to our council meeting tonight. All right. Thank you, Anshul. And next up, we have our 2026 top legislative priorities, and we have Brianna Murray. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Council President and Council. I have a bit of a sultry voice this afternoon, but hopefully you'll bear with me as we get ready to prepare for the 2026 legislative session. I'm Brianna Murray. I'm with Gordon Thomas Honeywell Government Relations, and I serve as your state contract lobbyist, advocating on your behalf before the state legislature. I'm also have a colleague, Amina Tiori, who you have seen at some of the other previous council meetings. She had a conflict and is not able to be here today, but is part of the team advocating on behalf of the City of Kent. This afternoon, I want to provide you with an overview of what to expect during the 2026 legislative session, and then review a draft legislative agenda that is included within your materials, and identify next steps to prepare for the upcoming legislative session. Starting first with what to expect in the 2026 session, you'll recall that the legislature operates on a 2-year cycle. We are halfway through that 2-year cycle. So we've completed the first year of the legislative biennium, and the 2026 session will begin the second year. As the second year of the biennium, it is a short legislative session scheduled to last 60 days. The political makeup of the legislature is largely similar to what it was last year. We do have a handful of legislators, including some of your local legislators, who are on the ballot this November. But regardless of the outcome of the handful of races, we are expecting Democrats to continue to have strong majorities in both chambers. All the bills that were introduced during the last legislative session that did not pass into law automatically carry over and continue to be considered in the 2026 legislative session. There's been a lot of reporting in the media around the state's budgets, and we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail, but the focus of this next session will be on making mid-biennial adjustments to the budgets that were just adopted in April that became effective in July. So as a reminder, the state's fiscal year runs July 1 of 2025 until June 30th of 2027. And coming in 2026, they'll be making mid-biennial adjustments to accommodate for changes in revenue or policy shifts that they may want to make. Immediately following the 2026 legislative session, all the members of the House of Representatives and half the members of the Senate will be up for re-election, which means 2026 is a big election year for the legislature. And traditionally, election years mean that the legislature shies away from making controversial decisions in short session years. There are some emerging themes for this next session that we're beginning to see percolate. The first is responding to different federal actions. There's a lot of concern around various federal budget cuts and a desire amongst some state legislators to use state resources to backfill federal cuts, whether that's to food assistance programs, Medicaid, or other services. The second major theme is the state's own ongoing budget challenges. The legislature did enact a significant tax package to fund their budget last legislative session. However, the economic revenue forecast that came out in September indicated that revenue collections are coming in below what was forecasted. And even with the increase in revenue that was raised last session, that the legislature is facing at least $900 million shortfall over the 4-year outlook. It's about $450-ish million for just this biennium. The legislature's obligation is to only balance the budget for within the existing biennium when they're in a short session. They don't have the same 4-year balance budget obligation in short sessions. However, there is a certain push for them to make sure they develop a balanced budget. That $900 million amount, or if you're looking at just the biennium, the $450 million amount, may increase, and there are many legislators indicating that it will increase into the $1.52 billion range as the cuts at the federal level become better understood and their impacts become better known on state services and state programs. So the known shortfall is in that $450 million range for this biennium, with the knowledge that it could possibly increase. The Association of Washington Cities has already developed their legislative priorities. I wanted to share these with you for some context of what other cities have chosen to prioritize this next session. You'll notice that some of these align with items that are on your draft agenda. The first one being funding for public defense, funding for local transportation, which could look like a new revenue tool for cities to choose to implement. It could also look like the state choosing to allocate more transportation dollars that they already collect to the local level. The third is on housing supply, which is a combination of asking legislators to recognize that there's been over 24 different bills passed in the last 5 years on various land use code changes that you all have been actively implementing, and asking for the time to make sure that that implementation can occur, with also a request that there be some investment made in actually constructing the housing rather than just focusing on the zoning. And then the fourth one is preserving state shared revenues, which is particularly important in light of the budget shortfall that the legislature is facing. My guidance for you all is to develop a legislative agenda that is focused, which means narrowed down to one page. You'll notice that the draft before you does do that, identify some top priorities that fit on one page, and are aligned with the process, political, and budget realities. So identifying requests and agenda items that recognize there's not a ton of money available at the state right now, that Democrats are in control, and that we're midway through the process. I also wanted to just go into a little bit more detail around funding opportunities within each of the three budgets. The operating budget is the most challenging budget to request funding within a supplemental budget year. It is also the budget that is facing that $450 million shortfall. So my recommendation is don't ask for money in that budget, or don't ask for a significant amount of money. The transportation budget continues to be focused on delivering, and the capital budget of the three is the most stable. Average appropriations out of the capital budget will be in the $250,000 to $500,000 range. So that's at a very academic level, some guidance and averages for your context as you think about the legislative agenda. The legislative agenda has two different sections to it. It has your top legislative priorities, which again, in the draft before you fit to one page, and a second document that is a whole series of policy statements. The reason we use this two-document approach is because it allows us to accomplish that focus that's needed to be effective in delivering our priorities to legislators, while also covering direction from you all on the wide variety of issues that the legislature considers that have an impact on city government. And so the policy statements are organized by department and highlight different areas, providing direction where the city can weigh in support, opposition, requesting amendments, and gives me direction to work with department directors in carrying out some of these items and reacting to various items that are introduced during the legislative process. So, with that structure in mind, I want to just review your top legislative priorities. You'll notice that some of these items are a bit ambitious for some of the context that I just offered to you all and funding opportunities. And I want to share with you that I think that is okay. I think the worst case scenario about asking for what you need is that they say no, but if you do not ask for what you need, then you will never get it. So I think we've tried to really balance the draft before you with wanting to outline what your needs are, but also recognizing some realities. So the first item is a funding request that would fall within the capital budget to fund efforts to decarbonize the Kent Administrative Services Building. We made this request last legislative session, and we got some traction with our local legislators in wanting to make these investments, but unfortunately we were not able to get included in the capital budget. So we want to bring back another request this session. We would be making this request of our 33rd district legislators, and we'd be focusing on funding to install LED lighting, energy efficient windows, improving the HVAC system, and some of the smaller components that may have a price tag that is more easily accomplishable within a short legislative session. Notably, we don't have a specific dollar amount outlined in this document to allow us to be nimble in responding to whatever the funding opportunity is that may emerge as we talk with our legislators. The second item is a funding adjustment of the 224th corridor. This was a project that we were successful in getting funding for in 2022 in the Move Ahead Washington package. In that package, the legislature allocated $20.6 million to the project. And then in 2023, they phased the project by allocating $10 million in the 2023-2025 biennium and $10.6 million in the 2025-27 biennium. However, last legislative session, they took that latter tranche of funding, that $10.6 million, and pushed it out to 27-29, causing a delay in the construction timeline schedule for the project. So at this point, because the legislature has made that decision, all work on the project has been paused, and our ask this session would be for them to reverse that decision, advance that funding forward again, and allow the project to proceed forward. The third item on the list is a request that we made last session, and is, of the items on the list, the one that I am sort of most skeptical of our ability to be successful in advancing forward. And it is a $2.63 million request. It would be within the operating budget in order to support your online utility bill software system. The reason that I think this one is challenging is because it's within the operating budget, which is the budget facing the most significant challenges. And it is also something where I think we'll get asked, if we fund this for the city of Kent, why shouldn't we fund it for every city? With that being said, this is an excellent community-facing project that every Kent resident will see the benefits of. And for that reason, it remains on the draft that's before you today. And I think a $2.63 million request can be a reasonable amount depending on how operating budget dynamics come together. The next item is an item that I have been working with the Community and Economic Development Department on. They have been working with an employer roundtable in order to explore different changes that could be made in the career and technical education pipeline system in order to support aerospace manufacturer employers in the city. So we've been doing a lot of outreach to the governor's office, the Office of Superintendent and Public Instruction, to really identify what changes could be made that are budget neutral, that could help support career and technical education pipeline. And this is a really direction to continue a lot of that work that we've been doing over the last few months. The next item is around liability. You may have seen in the media that the state has issued out a large number of settlements, and their own liability claims have gone into the red by about approximately $500 million, which is part of what's driving their budget shortfall. The city, similar to the state, has also faced an increase in liability over the years. And so we feel that the time is ripe, given that both the state and local government levels are facing these large liability costs, to ask the state to look at whether or not the liability laws in Washington really make sense. In 2012, there was a study done that outlined Washington state's liability exposure for public agencies in comparison to other states. And Washington state's exposure is much larger, primarily due to what's called joint and several liability, where if an agency is even 1% at fault, they can be responsible for the full settlement. And so this really calls on the city to join other stakeholders in encouraging the legislature to look at liability reform. The next item is on public defense funding. As you know, the Washington State Supreme Court issued new public defense standards earlier this year. Those standards will cause significant financial strain on city and county budgets and will create workforce challenges as public agencies go out and look to hire public defenders. So this calls on the city to join other public agencies throughout the state to look for permanent, ongoing, and ample funding in order to meet that new standard. And the last item is one we have spent a lot of time on, and that is really looking for an equitable and sustainable revenue structure for the city of Kent. To be honest with you, I do not anticipate significant action on this item in a short legislative session. However, it is such an important item that really weaves into all of the other requests that we end up making to the legislature, that it was warranted being on the front page and being kept front and center for our legislators. Just very briefly, the policy statements I am not going to go over in a significant amount of detail. I'll note for you that it is organized by department and it provides important policy direction to me in order to be able to react in a very timely fashion given the fast-paced nature of the legislative session. I want to just call out a couple of items that are emerging as hot topics for this next session. One of those is in the public safety space related to the regulation or the use of automated license plate readers or flock cameras. Another is a continued dialogue around the regulation of homeless encampments. And then I would just emphasize again the likelihood of us having a broad discussion around the importance of state shared revenues and reacting to any cuts to those state shared revenues. So very briefly, those are just three that I wanted to call out for your attention, but I could pick any three really. There's quite a few there. I'm going to stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have and want to get discussion and feedback from you all. I'll turn it over to you, Council President.
Thank you, Brianna. Councilmember Boyce.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, with the budget shortfall, how much do you know the difference between their forecasting revenue, how much that is off, versus what they're saying they're not going to get from the federal government?
The 450 million is the forecasted decline. It doesn't take into account any federal cuts.
How can they be so far off?
What, like why 400? So revenues have slowed in their collections. Many local governments are experiencing the same thing in their revenue collections. Sales tax is not coming in as robust. Inflation has increased. Inflation and costs have increased. So the same services are costing more to deliver. And then some of the items I mentioned around like the liability cases coming in higher than anticipated. The paid family medical leave program has come in more expensive than anticipated. There's several programs like that that are just costing more as far as a caseload goes.
But there are two choices: either you cut taxes or you
Right.
increase.
Yeah, so the last legislative session, they were facing a very similar dynamic, and the legislature chose to increase revenue. I think they had hoped that the revenue that they increased would be adequate to maintain all the services. And this legislative session, budget writers are saying they're not planning to increase revenue, but that means that they'll be looking at making cuts to services.
Do you foresee that really not increasing in your crystal ball?
I think there are two mindsets within the legislature. I think you will see Governor Ferguson really push for an austerity budget where there are significant cuts made. And then I think you will see other members of the legislature feel pretty strongly that there were some revenue proposals that were left undone from last legislative session, such as the wealth tax and the payroll tax, and a desire to not make cuts and to make further revenue adjustments. Whether there's a majority vote for any of those revenue bills prior to an election, I'd be skeptical.
Last question. Do you think they get the feel of just how expensive it is to live in this state and continue to, I mean, people just harder to live here?
Yeah, I think there are definitely sort of two different mindsets. I think we've seen Governor Ferguson say in many different settings that affordability in our state is one of his top priorities. I've heard that from several other legislators as well. And so I do think that there are some that recognize the rising costs of being a Washingtonian.
Well, we do appreciate you. Thank you for all you do.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Thank you, Brianna. I have a question about liability reform. What would that look like, I guess, or have they discussed that?
Yeah. So I think I think an ideal scenario would be to say that if a court were to find that an agency had contributed to the harm of an individual at like 3%, that then the individual or the agency would be responsible for 3% of whatever is needed to compensate for that harm. That is not the way our system is structured now. That would be the ideal way from the city's perspective to write the system. Politically, I do not think that is feasible. And so the conversation that folks are having is what do other states do that is something shy of that? And how does that work within Washington State's insurance structure? So that could look like caps, it could look like carve-outs for different types of harms, so not necessarily treating all liability the same. There's a lot of different, I guess, levers that could be pulled.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Brianna? If none, I am going to go ahead and make a motion. I move to adopt the city's 2026 state legislative agenda as reflected in the 2026 top legislative priorities and policy statements document.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you so much, Brianna. We appreciate you.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you all as we get ready for the legislative session.
All right. Okay, next up we have write-offs of uncollectible accounts, and we have Molly Bartlome. Welcome.
All right. Good evening, Council President Kaur and council members. I'm Molly Bartlome, the City of Kent Customer Service Manager in our Finance Department. So today, Finance is asking for your authorization to write off $200,141.34 of uncollectible receivables. And this is something Finance brings forward on a yearly basis. Unfortunately, right from the beginning, I will tell you that our number this year is quite a bit higher than it has been in years past. Just for some general comparison, in 2024, we brought forward about $74,000. 2023, it was $62,000. And some of you may remember last year when we brought write-offs forward, we did anticipate this because we kind of were talking about how we were bumping up of the years of COVID. And you'll see on your motion sheet that most of the amount tonight is for unpaid permits that were severely impacted by COVID. And the reason why they were so impacted by COVID is at the time of COVID, intake fees were deferred. So generally before a permit is processed and reviewed, those fees were due up front. But to be kind of similar to what our surrounding jurisdictions were doing and to keep movement on projects, those fees were deferred. And so now we're kind of seeing the impact of that. So for example, if somebody was doing a residential addition, they could submit that and the review would take place prior to that payment. And again, then if they decided not to go forward without that project, those fees we're still due. And I know during that time, material costs went up a lot, so I think there were maybe more than usual projects abandoned. I do want to say, this amount does not tell the full story. The Permit Center did amazing work. It did tons of reach out. They collected millions of dollars in unpaid fees. So though this amount is still higher than we'd like, it doesn't show the full story. But most importantly, this practice did stop in the spring of 2022, so this isn't something we're going to see going forward. We'll see a little bit of it next year because it'll be 22 amounts, and this practice stopped in the spring of 2022, so we might see some residual next year, but these large amounts should really decrease. And then just some additional notes on kind of general write-off information. So our standard practice is to bring items to write off when they are 3 years delinquent, not including the current year. And so that's just kind of to give us some consistency. But in the permit example, again, we would much rather allow more time to collect. So if a department has some type of payment that they think they're going to get, we will definitely pause on that. So the finance department never brings something to collections or to write off without working with that department. They know more about, that fee and the status. So it is the finance department and whoever billed that department working together. Also important to note that 99% of the write-off amount tonight has been transferred to our collections company. So in no way is this debt forgiven. It's kind of the way I look at it is kind of the city has gone stale and our attempts to collect have been unsuccessful. So we're hoping that the collections agency has better luck than we do in collecting. From meeting with them, they do reach out to everybody, but they're going to put their emphasis on where they think they're most likely to collect. As far as their collection rate, it is only 8%. Obviously, we wish it was higher, but the city does have the opportunity to collect all the fees that we sent to them. They have their their collection rate, but we can get all of our principal back. So this time, if there's any questions.
Councilor Boyce, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I'm reading about the ECD. I kind of get it, but I don't get it, right? So, this is, I'm assuming that this audit was found during the retirement of Kiva, right? So I'm assuming any of those business still around that actually got these permit? Do you know?
I can't speak to specific accounts. I do know, I think a lot of them are residential. A lot of the ones that I saw were residential. I'm guessing there are some commercial ones in there. I'm not sure if any of those are a business that's still open in the city.
Well, they're residential. They're people who actually build homes, right?
Right, or it could be an individual, again, applying for a deck permit for their house, and then they decided not to. That is a lot of deck permits. Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
You want to come up here? No.
Was Matt coming up to answer that?
Very expensive debt, Matt.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your interest, and Molly did a great job of explaining it. I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but I'll just reiterate what she said. Typically, ECD collects review fees when a permit application comes in the door. And then we collect inspection fees or impact fees before the permit goes out the door. So we're covering our cost of providing the service at the appropriate time. During COVID, though, in order to reduce the number of contacts people had to make driving in and all the load that was on our system for collecting, we decided to waive the upfront fees and collect them at the end. Then if someone had applied for a permit like a deck or an addition to the home and then decided not to do the project, they just walked away. Never paid us anything. So that's why you see that spike. We actually brought in some temporary staff to help us do all the outreach to collect on as much of that as we could. As Molly said, we collected millions, got all that caught up, and these are just the residuals.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Matt. Councilmember Troutner, followed by Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you, Madam President. Molly, I don't know if you explained this, but if somebody has a balance and then we send it to collections, do we have to remove the interest or fines that were attached to that, or do we send the whole amount?
Whole amount is sent.
Okay, perfect, because then that helps us get some of that, like you said. Thank you.
Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So is 8% an industry standard, or is that what our return is from our company? And do we go out and check with other collection agencies from time to time who do municipal debts?
I do know we've talked to some surrounding jurisdictions, and I think we're kind of similar. I can't speak to, I know this, we're down to 8% last year, we're closer to 10%, but now adding all these fees, it's kind of skewed those. But yeah, I feel strongly that our collections agency is, doing the outreach and trying to collect these fees. Unfortunately, there's just some where they kind of run into a dead end.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? If
I have a
none,
question.
go ahead, Councilman.
Yes, thank you, Molly. Thank you, Matt, for your presentation. I have a question about, you said 98% has been referred to collections. Are they referred or are they sold to collection at a lower price?
So we refer them all to our collections company. And again, our hope is that they're going to collect and reimburse us those amounts that we send.
Okay. So but are we paying a fee to the collections?
So we don't pay a fee. The collections agency does collect a fee if they collect the money, but there's no cost to us for using the collection agency.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you. If none, I'll make a motion. I move to authorize the mayor to write off uncollectible accounts owed to the city in the amount of $200,141.34, subject to final approval of the finance director.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Molly. All right, next up, we have our Finance Director, Paula Painter, Office of the Washington State Auditor Engagement Letter for the 2024 audit.
Good evening. I'm Paula Painter, Finance Director. Nice to be here, Council President Corr, members of City Council. As we do every year, the State Auditor's Office has come to the city to perform a variety of audits for us. The financial, the single audit is really auditing our federal grants, and then also accountability audit. Right now in front of you is a letter to engage with the state auditor for 2 of those 3 audits, and that's going to be the financial audit and the single audit for 2024. The entrance conference for this audit was held on October 16th, although we have been engaged with the auditors before then. And there is ample budget with ample dollars within our budget to be able to cover the cost of this. So tonight, I am asking that you authorize the mayor and I to sign this engagement letter with the State Auditor's Office.
Okay, any questions or comments? All right, I'll go ahead and read the motion. I move to authorize the mayor and finance director to sign the engagement letter with the Office of the Washington State Auditor for the 2024 audit.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Paula. All right, next up, we have our city clerk, Kim Komodo, with current and future addendums to the Granicus LLC software as service agreement. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Kim Komodo, City Clerk, and I'm coming before you tonight to ask for authorization to enter into current and future addendums to the software as a service agreement with Granicus. And this addendum tonight is related to the purchase of a new agenda management system. We currently use a Granicus product that is ending life. It's ending support in 2026 and ending life in 2027. Did a bunch of research over the past 2 years with other jurisdictions and the platforms that were out there. And this product there was only 2 products that met all of the criteria. The other one was also a Granicus product. The main criteria that I focused on was that it has an integration with Laserfish, so that when I publish and distribute an agenda and minutes, and this goes for all boards and commissions also, that it's got a workflow that goes directly into Laserfish. It's a more robust program, but I mean, we don't have a say in how complicated or basic of a system that we can get. It's a new system, and it comes with all the bells and whistles, whether we want them or not. So this agreement is for implementation plus 3 years. And the overall agreement that we have with Granicus expires before this would expire, so this is helping, once that one is extended, this one will be captured in that, so that they're both lined up. So,
Any questions or comments? Councilmember Larmer.
What do we pay currently for?
it is like about $20,000 currently for our system that is at least 20 years old.
So we're essentially looking at about double that.
It's like, you can see that the implementation, we got them to come down a little bit on the implementation, the one-time setup, but then every year it's $50,000.
And that's because of all those bells and whistles.
Yes, and because the system that we have, we've been paying it for 20 years at about that amount of money, so it's inflation too.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Fincher.
So does this system also handle like public records requests or just all of our meetings?
Yes, so we will convert everything that we currently have in our agenda management system, agendas, minutes, video for all boards, commissions, everything that's currently in there will go into this new system. Public records is GovQA, it's a totally different system.
All right. If there are no other questions, I'll make the motion. I move to approve the one meeting proposal and to incorporate it as an addendum to the city's software agreement with Granicus LLC and to authorize the mayor to make future purchases and approve subsequent proposal addendums to the Granicus LLC software agreement if those purchases are within the city's established budgets and made during the current term of the contract or any later contract extensions, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the IT director and city attorney.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Kim. All right, now we have Tracy Taylor with 2 new neighborhood councils. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Council President, Council members. Thanks for the opportunity to present this afternoon. For the record, my name is Tracy Taylor. I'm the Communications Coordinator for the city here. I also lead the neighborhood program, and my goal is to introduce you to 2 neighborhood groups who have applied to become official recognized neighborhood councils through our neighborhood program. We'll cover some background on our program, our benefits of recognition, and then 2 of the new neighborhoods. So first, a quick refresher on why we have a recognized neighborhood council. This model, through the city's neighborhood program, we encourage resident-led grassroots neighborhood organizations to strengthen communications and connections amongst neighbors, increase civic engagement, and partner with the city to improve livability here in Kent. When a neighborhood becomes recognized, it gains access to key benefits, eligibility to our neighborhood matching grants, communications grants, mini grant programs, staff support from the neighborhood program, and formal recognition by the mayor and the council. In turn, the neighborhood agrees to certain organizational requirements, regular communication with residents, the intent to partner with the cities and with the city and the neighborhood improvements. Recognition is not just a label; it strengthens neighbors, connects them to resources, and creates a stronger partnership between city and our residential communities. Since the program's inception, we have now 57 recognized neighborhood councils across the city. Those councils have leveraged grant funding, hosted drinks in the driveway, sidewalk sessions, organized block parties, participated in National Night Out, and several beautification projects. For example, through the Neighborhood Matching Grant Program, the Misty Meadows neighborhood improved their landscaping as you enter their neighborhood by implementing 42 brand new trees. Now, all of this contributes to a broader city goal, which is building connections for people and places and creating thriving neighborhoods. So I'd like to introduce, of course, the map here. This is the latest map from our GIS system with the 57 recognized neighborhoods. Excited to introduce you to the 2 new ones, one of which is the Parks neighborhood, which is north of South 216th and east of Fragor Road South. Their leadership consists of an HOA president, which is Claire Wilson, and their vice president, Alexander Lewis. They have already had several block gatherings, a summer social event, as you can see here, a Drinks in the Driveway event earlier this summer. They do have strong resident interest and an active organizing community, or committee rather. And then the next one is the Meridian Ridge Hunter Oaks neighborhood, which is north of Southeast 279th Place and east of 151st Place Southeast. Their leadership team consists of their president, Megan Smith, and their co-president, Alex Smithing. Their communication and outreach, they've had several series of events, active participation from their residents in various ages and backgrounds, and they've already begun identifying opportunities for grants, and of course, very anxious to participate in our grant program and partnership support. And then, of course, the most important thing, I think, when it comes to being recognized and then afterwards is the neighborhood councils are listed on that interactive map as their recognized neighborhood, and they can display their signage within their branding of their neighborhood consistent with their identity. And of course, like we talked about, the matching grant funds, the mini grant funds, and their communication grant funds. So I'm excited to introduce these two neighborhoods to you and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tracy. It's always exciting to have more neighborhoods get engaged. I mean, that's the best part, right? We get to know about each other and learn about your neighbors and then get those grants. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Tracy, for your presentation. I just have one simple question, and that is there a minimum number of houses that have to be in these applying for grants? I mean,
minimum number of housing, no. As long as you have a formed organizational structure, we've had, as one fact, we have one neighborhood, I think they have under 30 households that are involved.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Okay, and I will go ahead and read the motion. I move to adopt resolution number 2098, recognizing the Meridian Ridge Hunter Oaks Neighborhood Council, supporting its community building efforts, and conferring on it all opportunities offered by the City of Kent's Neighborhood Program.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now I'll read the second one. I move to adopt resolution number 2099, recognizing the Parks Neighborhood Council, supporting its community building efforts, and conferring on it all opportunities offered by the City of Kent's Neighborhood Program.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Sorry about that sneeze. All right, next up we have Parks Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Madam President. We have two items tonight on Parks, and we have Kyle Woods here to present them both.
Good afternoon, Council. Kyle Woods, Parks Planning and Development Director. For the first presentation, I'm here to discuss consulting services for the redesign of Town Square Plaza in downtown Kent. So this slide here shows the existing conditions of our Town Square Plaza in downtown Kent. The Town Square Plaza redesign is part of a coordinated approach with the Uplands Spray Park project. The Uplands Spray Park project has expanded through several grant awards, including funding from the National Park Service. This has supported the development of Kent's first purpose-built spray park and other park upgrades at Uplands. With the Uplands Spray Park moving forward, there's a strong benefit and efficiency to aligning the Town Square Plaza planning with Uplands. The new spray park at Uplands will replace the existing Town Square fountain as Kent's primary water play feature. The Town Square fountain is now about 20 years old. It's kind of reaching its end of useful life. It's been very popular and well-loved for families coming into downtown, and the mechanical systems and finishes have significantly deteriorated, and it makes it increasingly difficult and costly to maintain, as well as, from what I've heard, quite a bit of downtime on that fountain. Next one. So once the fountain is decommissioned, we need a new vision for this plaza. that will continue to draw people downtown, support an active, welcoming public space. And the goals of this redesign include replacing the aging fountain with a destination play space, increasing positive year-round use, encouraging more visits to downtown, ensuring a high-quality design aesthetic appropriate for an urban setting, and creating a memorable and inviting downtown gathering space. The project may also include restroom improvements for safety and durability, on-site relocation of the rotary sphere, which is the granite ball, and retention and flexibility for events and the farmers market. This marks the first step in a new design effort for Town Square Plaza, coordinated with the Uplands Park to maintain consistency, efficiency, and connection across these two family-oriented community spaces. For this project, we're recommending J.A. Brennan Associates. They also designed Kherson Park and the next door downtown lots. And they're going to lead this design effort from concept all the way through construction. And that concludes this part of my presentation. I'll open for questions.
Thank you so much, Kyle. We have a question from Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you, Kyle. So I very much like the idea of creating a multi-purpose space, especially for, events, farmers market. I do question the play area though, because Kherson is so close. Do we feel like we'd be cannibalizing? And like Kherson draws people into that more historic core of downtown.
Right.
Would this actually be working against that, where they wouldn't go further into that?
I don't think so, because they are so close, and I think this town square is going to be more of a destination where people are going to come for that playground itself, kind of a grander playground than Kherson.
Okay.
Any other questions for Kyle? Councilmember Boyce?
Thank you. Make sure I'm tracking. So are we talking about the little spray thing that goes up, the water thing, right?
We're talking about Town Square Plaza.
That's where the water goes, where the kids play in the summertime.
Now, yeah, the fountain.
But that's
up
gonna
the ball.
that's gonna go away.
That's going to go away, yeah.
They get used pretty much in the summertime by lots of kids, though, right?
Yep. So that's why we're trying to coordinate that with Uplands and to become our next play feature with our destination spray park at Uplands.
Gotcha.
We'll replace the fountain at Town Square, and Town Square will be more of a destination play structure.
Okay. All right, thank you for clarification.
In this particular, it's a ball that spins. Like, it's not working as well as it should anymore, and it's closed a lot of times during the summer. It's pretty frustrating. Any other questions? All right, I will read the motion. I move to authorize the mayor to sign the consultant services agreement with J.A. Brennan PLLC, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Parks Director and City Attorney.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry.
I did come up with one. I'm guessing that there will be the regular and public engagement as they're going along the process.
So we're going to engage the public.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion passes. Thank you so much. All right.
Okay, now we get to talk about restrooms. This is I'm sharing the information about a planned restroom facility, and this is at East Hill North Park. So kind of a reminder of where that is. It's 132nd and 216th in Northeast Kent. This restroom will be part of a new park development at 132nd and 216th. The site offers beautiful views and a clear sightline to Mount Rainier, but it also presents a unique challenge related to the sewer service due to the site's elevation and distance from existing infrastructure. So that's looking south from 216th, and I kind of marked the general vicinity of where the newer park facility and restroom would be, and that trail runs right along the ridge. There's wetlands on both sides and clear sight lines to Mount Rainier. So water service for this site is available through Seuss Creek Water District, but connecting to a public sewer line is not feasible here. Because of this limitation, a traditional plumbed restroom isn't possible at this location. Typically, park amenities like restrooms are purchased as a part of the overall construction bid package at the same time we're constructing it. In this case, the lack of existing sewer infrastructure places the cost burden of the utility extensions directly onto the project. Extending a sewer main line would be cost prohibitive, so Kents Park is pursuing a prefabricated, self-contained restroom facility, which is permitted under King County Board of Health Code. Through early coordination with King County Health staff, Green Flush Technologies was identified as our preferred vendor for this. Further research confirmed that Green Flush is one of the only vendors in the region with the direct experience constructing sewage holding tank restrooms and successfully navigating King County health permitting requirements. So if you think of it as basically a pit toilet, but this is a pit toilet that just, you're not looking down into the pit, it actually flushes into the pit. So it's a lot better user experience than your national park restrooms that have a pit underneath. So from the user perspective, they're gonna just think it's a regular restroom. So that's one of the unique features of this type of restroom. Because of the complexity of this system and a 6 to 8 month lead time for fabrication, we're requesting the approval to purchase the restroom in advance. Early coordination with the vendor will also allow their design consultation to inform the park's final layout, including utility connections, grading, and placement. This prefabricated, self-contained restroom provides a sustainable, durable, and cost-effective solution that enables a permanent restroom at Eastville North despite the lack of a sewer infrastructure. That concludes my presentation for the restroom.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. I appreciate that this is an upgraded pit toilet. Councilmember Larmer has a question.
Yeah, so do we have these anywhere else in our system?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so is this going to require like a new type of vehicle or pump? Like, how does it get maintained if it's something we've not done before?
Pulled out of a sewer manhole lid by a Vector truck that will pull up into the parking lot.
It's on. Okay.
So now that I think of it, I think 3 Friends might have this type, because I've seen a Vector truck there pulling out sewage, but I haven't been here long enough to know that much of our infrastructure, but I have seen one there.
Okay, so it's not, like, we're not going to have to purchase a new type of vehicle to do the same service?
No, pretty standard. Just a Vector truck a service would come and do it for us.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Like, Public Works would come and clean it out, or?
I think we'd have to pay a service.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think Public Works could. I don't think they like it.
I don't know. Okay, any other questions? Councilmember Fincher?
Thank you. So if it's at 3 Friends, I know they get a lot of, or likely get a lot of people. They have, people go by with the running and all. But I'm thinking someone has a large party or gathering out there. Do we just call for extra service, or how does that work?
It's thousands and thousands of gallons.
Okay.
In capacity, so not usually an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Kyle, do you know how much a sewer line would cost?
I think for this site, you'd have to put in a pump station, so millions.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody on 216th is on septic.
Do they not do septic tanks in these type of situations?
We're very close to wetlands on both sides on this location, so
gotcha.
It's difficult to do that.
Any other questions for Kyle? No? Okay. I will read the motion. I move to authorize the mayor to sign the goods and services agreement with Green Flush Technologies, LLC, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Parks Director and City Attorney.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Thank you so much, Kyle. Back to you, Council President.
Now we have public safety, Councilmember Boyce.
Okay, we're gonna have Sarah come up here. She always bringing us some good news, so keep the streak going.
More good news. Thank you very much for having me. Sarah Halstead, Community Education Coordinator with the Kent Police Department. and I'm here this evening to present to you the Association of Washington Cities Alternative Response Team Grant Award that we received in the amount of $190,000. And just for some background, in October 2023, Kent Police entered into a pilot program with Project Be Free, a nonprofit community-based organization responsible for domestic violence programming and ultimately providing co-response services alongside our Kent police officers out in the field. They provide staff persons to respond with our officers to domestic violence calls for service pretty much on an on-call basis as needed. And staff members from Project Be Free are trained in mental health services as well as domestic violence case management and bilingual. In this last fiscal year, the city received funding from the same grant from Association of Washington Cities, and those funds expired June 30th, 2025. When the grant funds ran out, I believe council authorized funding to continue the Project Be Free co-response program. However, we did receive this grant again. It was just delayed a couple months due to a lot of the kind of just the framework that was happening at the state at the time. And so we're now using these grant funds, if authorized, to supplement the general fund dollars and continue and increase the co-response services out in the field. This grant runs through June 30th, 2026, along with the state fiscal year. So it's in line with state funding. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Good news. I can't imagine having any questions. Don't see any. Okay, I'm going to make a motion. I move to accept grant funds in the amount of $190,000 from the Association of Washington City for the Domestic Violence Co-Responder Program. Amend the budget, authorize the expenditure of the funds, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents subject to terms and conditions acceptable to the chief of police and city attorney. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. All right, next up, we have Public Works, Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one for us tonight. We're going to hear from David Payne on state funding from the Move Ahead Washington Act to support Interurban Trail Improvements Project.
Councilmember, Council President, Council members, David Payne, City Transportation Planner, presenting on the Interurban Trail Improvements from the Move Ahead Washington Funds. So this is an interesting bookend to outside council's presentation earlier this afternoon on the Move Ahead Washington. One of the projects that was funded out of this biennium is this project. So this is funded by the state, does not require a local match by the city. We have 6 locations across the six at-grade crossing locations across the Interurban Trail that you can see on the illustration at the left. This would include improvements at 6 of the locations of the crossings, south to 12th Street, West James Street, West Smith Street, Meeker, South 259th Street, and South 262nd Street. So all 6 of these locations need to be constructed and complete within the legislative session, and it is a $2 million grant. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions or defer to my phone a friend as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love it when there's no match. Any questions? In that case, I move to accept funds from the Washington State Department of Transportation in the amount of $2 million for the Interurban Trail Improvements Project, amend the budget as necessary, authorize the expenditure of funds, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary agreements and other documents subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Public Works Director and City Attorney.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Councilmember Fincher. With that, we are at the end of our meeting. We will be back at 5:15 for our council workshop. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to Kent City Council Workshop for Tuesday, October 21st, 2025. We have 3 items on our agenda, and very first item is our 2026 mid-biennial budget adjustments, and we should have our Finance Director, Paula Painter, here. Welcome.
Good evening, Council President Corr, members of City Council. I'm Paula Painter. I am here to follow up on the 2026 mid-biennium budget adjustment. Last week we went through and chatted about pretty much all the changes that were included within this budget amendment, and this year is our opportunity, or this year, hey, you know, time's going by really fast. And this evening is our opportunity to kind of dive in a little bit more to some of the questions that were both raised during the meeting 2 weeks ago, and then also that were submitted to us. So I'm going to go ahead and walk us through some information. So first off, last year is what I wanted to say. Last year we did have a conversation about B&O tax. And with the B&O tax, we had made some changes to that, and it was going to bring in close to an additional $300,000. And then there was some discussion about whether or not we should use that money to bring on another officer within that budget. And there was a lot of discussion that went back and forth related to that. And at the end of the day, what we had decided to do, or you guys had decided to do, is like, let's hold tight, let's see what the legislature did. Now, the legislature did not do everything that we had hoped they would do during their process, but during that process, they did provide us with an opportunity to have some funding to bring on some officers. In fact, the 2026 proposed budget has 10 commissioned officers and 1 corrections officer included in that budget. So one of the things that I thought that I would do is let's take a step back and look at our police officer counts over the years. So we're going back to 2026 where we had 150 commissioned officers. Now that includes our chief and our deputy chief. So let's just kind of make sure that we're aware that's all of those ranks there. And the goal of the council was to be able to bring on 2 to 3 officers a year. And you can see through 2017 to 2025, with all the positions that were approved, we had 170 commissioned officers this year. With the 10 that we're adding, that will be 180 commissioned officers for 2026. So when we start looking at that, I'm like, well, where would we have been if we actually were able to keep with those 2 to 3 officers a year? Interestingly enough, we start with that 150 commissioned officers in 2016. You add 2 a year, you end up at 170, right where we're at today. So, hey, that actually is great to some degree. If we had added 3 officers a year, that would be getting us to 180 commissioned officers, which is where we will be in 2026. I think for one that shows that now based on what happened, we're actually on track to where we really wanted to be. You'll see the slowdown with being able to add those positions once COVID hit, budgets got tight. But this is where we're at. So now when we start looking at this, it's now time to have a little discussion about what do we want to do from this point. Now that we know what the legislature did, we know where our counts are, what do we want to do about that discussion we had last year? What I will say before I turn it over to you guys to continue on, when we created the 2026 budget, it was adopted that with us eating into fund balance by just over $3 million. It was like $3,018,000. Now, with the changes that we've made to the budget, which it did include increases to B&O tax by over $500,000, but then decreases to sales tax by almost $500,000, we're actually going to have to use fund balance of $3,181,000. So we're eating into fund balance $170,000 more than we had originally planned to do. And what's not included in these numbers are AFSCME and Teamsters negotiations. Both of those contracts are being negotiated right now. We do have in the budget a 2.5% COLA that's included. CPI came in at 2.7%. We don't know where that's all going to land. And the public defenders, as we start looking at caseload changes, that's not in here yet because we're still working through, or they're still working through some of that. So we do know that we have some unknowns in the general fund budget, but I wanted to at least plant a picture for you guys to continue that conversation that we had last year.
Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Council President. Okay, Paula, so we know we're still short on officers. What is our plan going forward on how to fund more officers?
That is a great question. I do know that there are still some opportunities that come with that House Bill 2015, where there's granting opportunities, which obviously cannot fund ongoing officers, but it can help cover things. If you look at the budget related to, do you mind? We're gonna cover two things at once because of the direction we're going here. Give me a second, let me figure out what slide I wanna get to. I'm gonna probably jump all the way to the end of our presentation. Oop, too far. Can you please get my presentation started again? And I need slide 13 if you're able to get me right on that. Sorry about that, I got a little click happy there. There we go, right here. All right. So with the new 0.1% sales tax that is part of this 2026 budget, we're estimated to bring in $3.6 million in sales tax revenue. With that, this budget includes 11 FTEs. And then there is a lot of dollars under supply, services, and equipment. That's getting these officers going. So we will have still more capacity within this here. It's going to be difficult because we do have to bring on support staff as well. But there is some capacity, like upfront charges are pretty high, but to bring on some additional staff once we get our officers up and running. What we're going to do with the other funding, Councilmember Michaud, that is a very good question. But I don't have a good answer for that at the moment.
Okay, I think it's just good for us to think about that moving forward, because now we're right where we had planned for a long time. We're finally there.
Yes.
With this additional 11 or 10. Yeah, so something we need to think about.
Any other questions or comments about this? All right, you can keep going, Paula.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Give me a second to get back to where I needed to be. Okay. Another question that came up had to do with what positions are we paying for out of the criminal justice fund? So there's several things that are really, that fall under the criminal justice fund, and actually there's bigger categories than what you see right here. But when we're talking mostly about the positions that are being funded out of the criminal justice fund, the city clerk does have 2 positions that are funded from the red light camera fund, and that's for a public records admin and a public disclosure analyst, both being funded out of that. Our court has 3/4 of a position that's funded out of the opioid settlement, and that's for our community court resource coordinator. And then there's 2 positions that are the judicial specialists that are being funded from the red light cameras. Our law department has 6.5 positions, which is 3 paralegals and 3 prosecuting attorneys that are paid for just out of the general criminal justice fund. And then the red light camera, there are 2 prosecuting attorneys I don't believe both of those are filled, but they are budgeted from there. There is also police support staff. There's 4 positions, and that includes 2 evidence custodians and 2 records specialists. And then for the police commissioned officers, there are 18. And that number has ranged over the years, sometimes less, sometimes more. It just depends. I know when we did the budget cuts because of COVID, we actually froze 5 officer positions, and at the time, the general fund didn't have the capacity to take them, but the criminal justice fund did have the capacity to take them. If revenues begin to continue to go down in that fund, that might change, so we'll have to be mindful of that, that is a shift that may have to go back to the general fund, just depending on what revenues are coming into that fund. So when we start talking about the revenues, I'm figuring that might be your next question as to what revenues are going into that fund. Obviously, you have the red light camera revenues, you have the opioid settlement dollars. Those cover those 6.75 FTEs. But for just the general criminal justice fund that are covering these other positions, we have sales tax, which the budget's about $4.7 million that goes there. There's some interest income. You have your motor vehicle excise tax for high crime population and special programs. That's about $785,000. And then there is a transfer in that goes into that general criminal justice fund for the body worn camera specialty pay. That's pretty small at $24,000. So that's the primary revenue that is supporting those positions that are under that criminal justice column. And at this point, I'd be happy to take any questions about the criminal justice fund that you might have.
Okay, quick question. On that court, the opioid, have always been there, or is something new? I mean, the funding just came up.
Yeah, the funding's pretty new, and then it was with the 2025-26 biennial budget process that we allocated dollars to opioid settlement dollars to the community court to be able to cover the resource coordinator, and that resource coordinator had started off at part-time and now is full-time.
Where was it at part-time? Where was the fund allocated from, do you know?
Where was the resource coordinator paid for out of? What was that? General fund.
General fund.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. No other questions? Another question that came through was, okay, so you have the pie, you show how much percentage of the expenditure pie is paying for public safety. So what happens when we pull out the fire piece of that? So police makes up 50% of the expenditures, fire would be 53% of the expenditure. So that's the only change from the pie that you had seen earlier. Any questions on that?
What is culture and recreation? What is that bucket consist of?
That's the Parks Department.
Okay, all right.
Yes. Yeah, we want to keep them there and happy. All right. Okay, so during the meeting a couple weeks ago when we talked about the budget, I had mentioned that our claims experience is going up, and Councilmember Fincher had asked a question of what's driving up those claims, and then I had a follow-up question to learn a little bit more about our health care plan, and I realized there are some things that maybe several of our council members don't know about our health care plan. The city has a couple of healthcare plans. They have Premera and Kaiser. The Premera plan is the city's self-insured plan. So employees who pick the Premera plan, every time they get paid, they contribute to they have to pay their premiums or their insurance premiums. The city also pays a good portion of those insurance premiums. All of those premiums are collected and put into the Health and Wellness Fund. That Health and Wellness Fund is then able to be used to first pay for our costs to administer the program. So Premera, the City of Kent does not process claims. We have contracted with Premera Blue Cross. Premera processes all of our claims. They handle all of the negotiations with our network, their network, all of that. So they handle that. Once they pay claims on our behalf, we reimburse them for those claims. And it's only with Premera and VSP and dental that we do that. So it's all of those that we reimburse those claims because we are self-insured. The fund has been very healthy for the last several years and is still very healthy. In fact, since 2019, the Premera premiums have not gone up at all, and the fund has maintained and actually has grown. This year, 2025, we're actually going to eat into fund balance, and there's a couple reasons behind it. We were able to keep those premiums status quo for quite a few years because, for one, through COVID, people weren't going to the doctor nearly as much. So we were not using up all those, paying as much out in claims as we would have been paying otherwise. Also, if you think back at the troubles that we had getting people hired and retaining people, so we had tons of vacant positions. So then we were not really expending all of the dollars that we would typically expend. For the last few years, we have began to see growth in those claims. So that growth in claims costs are because of a couple of, well, more than a couple of reasons, several different reasons. First off, we're actually more fully staffed. So that means we have more people participating in the program. So we have more people, going to the doctor, and we're having to pay for things. Secondly, the costs, as with everything else, are going up, and they're going up pretty drastically, like you see, everyone sees with their grocery bills, and their medical is no different. Those costs are going up. And then there's also legislation that passes that then says what different medical things have to be covered, so that those change and progress. So as you begin to introduce, as new things are required to be paid for, that's just one more cost that gets tacked on. We have been over the last probably 12 months seeing a pretty substantial, rolling 12 months, a substantial increase in the claims that are coming in each month. I will say this last month, month of September, those claims actually did level out to what our normal levels are. So they had been running about $200,000 more per month. So it'll be interesting to see if this month is an anomaly or if things are slowing back down. 1 month is definitely not a trend, but we do anticipate continuing to see those claims grow because that's just what happens. Things cost more. We will need to increase our premiums. We're not doing it this time around because we do have a healthy fund balance that I'd like to see us tap into a little before we start raising those premiums. But if you wait too long to raise the premiums, all of a sudden you have to do a big jump. So we want to be methodical and thoughtful about that. So you'll see us come forward with the 2027-28 budget, looking to be able to increase those premiums at a reasonable rate. Trying to find the right word. Reasonable rate without having to really jump things up.
Question. Councilmember President, question. Paula, I know like within Premera we have two different plans because we have some people that were grandfathered into a plan. Does it cost the city more for people that are on that particular plan than like the 80/20?
Yeah, and we actually have 3 plans. So we have the $15 plan, which is like the Cadillac plan. That one is our most expensive plan. So that one definitely does cost the city the most amount of money. Then we have the 80/20 plan, and we have an HSA plan. And so the other 2 plans kind of flip-flop back and forth as to which one's costing the city more money. But yes, that is correct. It does depend on what plan we're talking about.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I don't see any other questions.
All right. Okay, so there was a question about the fact that the Mill Creek project was pushed out a year. And that, I think, is really a great question because it began to help us to realize there's a lot of things that we can talk to you guys about that maybe you weren't aware of. And so one of the things that I think is important to recognize is that our capital improvement program, our CIP plan, is really a fluid document. It's always changing. We look at it every year with the budget cycle, and then decisions have to be made. So with the Parks Department and with theirs, there's several things that they really look at every year with their CIP to make decisions about how they're going to fund projects. And whether it's are there current or anticipated grant opportunities? If we can spend somebody else's money, we want to make sure that we're rejiggering our dollars to be able to take advantage of that. Are there funding deadlines? Do we have money that we have to spend or we end up losing it? Is there a shift in either city or community priorities? Is there accelerated asset deterioration? Or maybe it's not deteriorating as fast as we had anticipated. And then, does our parks capacity, our staff have capacity to handle all the projects? And then, of course, you have your typical planning, permitting, bidding, construction, all of these things that have to be done that you need to work around because those timelines are going to impact some of the decisions that you make. And so one of the other things to think about with the CIP plan is it's not necessarily what you see is not necessarily what is going to get done that year, because in many regards we start putting money away like a savings account into a project until we have enough to either do the whole project or to do phase one of the project. And so sometimes that really involves planning ahead and being prepared to set that money aside. So it's not necessarily the work plan as much as the let's strategically plan how we're going to get the projects done. So when you start seeing things move around, those are I'm giving Parks as the example, but that's really the same thing that happens with all of our departments. They're going through and they're making decisions on how best to move these items forward. Specifically talking about the Mill Creek Canyon, this project requires significant planning, permitting, environmental review process before the design can even be created. And so the construction for that is actually going to be many years out. By shifting the funding allocation to 2027, this allows time for some of those other steps to get completed. And that way that the funding is more aligning when the work can actually be getting done. The trail and phase one improvements, those were actually combined into a phase one Mill Creek Earthworks project to create a single project. So this will be more comprehensive, and it's going to streamline coordination and reduce some of that administrative burden that they would be facing. The annual trail maintenance is going to continue for the foreseeable future so that the trail remains viable and that in most cases would improve year over year. Some of the other moves, just to kind of give you some perspective on why these shifts happened, because it wasn't just the Mill Creek, it was some others. The North Hill Community Park remains one of our highest priorities, and it is a complex multi-phase project requiring careful planning to address the design, access, circulation, road improvements, and neighborhood connectivity. And given the scope of that work and the detailed planning, including some cross-departmental planning that needs to happen, it's going to be a large-scale project that's going to require significant amounts of staff time. So some of these projects, they're just more labor-intensive, and so that they need to adjust that in order to reflect the workload that they're going to need to be taking on and find that balance. The Uplands Playfield in Town Square Plaza, there was an award of a National Park Service grant that created an opportunity in the Uplands project. And so this would include a new spray park, which is super exciting for Kent because this will be our very first spray park here in Kent. And They're aligning that project along with the Town Square Plaza project, which right now, the fountain that's there, it's really at end of life, and it's being held together pretty much by Band-Aid fixes. And so ideally, these two projects will run together to be completed in order to have something where families can still go and have a splash park to play in and have that water on those hot summer days. Wilson Playfields, that was another that was adjusted as well. That one has the turf that's out there is past its useful life. Useful life's 10 years, and it was put in 2014. However, our maintenance crews have done a really good job maintaining that, and they believe they can push that out to 2031. That being said, it could change as they continue to assess this, and that might move to another year, need to be done sooner, but based on what they're seeing today, that's another one that can be pushed out a little bit further. So as you can see, they look at kind of the logistics and what really makes sense for what we're doing with all of these various projects. Do you have any questions?
No. I just remember when we got that turf and, going through the process of getting it in and how far behind the replacement that they were taking out, how long that was past, and like the golf course. So there's a common theme there, and our department does a great job in maintaining what they do have, but there is an end that we have to consider.
All right. So we already talked about this slide a little bit. There was a question that asked about the ratio of officers to sergeants. Our current ratio right now is 5.56. We have that new sales tax that's coming in. That's going to bring on 11 FTEs, 10 of which are commissioned officers. And also funding to get them up and rolling. All right, and that takes it to the end of my presentation. So I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have. I also have my peers in the audience, so if you ask me a trick question, I might have to call them up to help bail me out.
Thank you, Paula. All right, any questions, comments right now? Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Council President. Paula, I just want to thank you and the staff who took the time to email me very thorough answers, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Troutner.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Paula. Thank you to your staff. We've had really good conversations, great questions from Councilmember Michaud, but I think as we go into this next year, we do have to be very cautious about how we're looking at things with the public defender issue coming up. We don't know how much that's going to cost the city. We don't know what cuts are going to come from the legislature. So I think this just will lead for us to have a different discussion next year of how we want to proceed. But I appreciate where we are right now. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? And I think we also, we had our federal policy committee with AWC, and there's that also funding potentially that we rely on sometimes from federal level that might not come through for our projects. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a different conversation next year. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Before I step down, I just wanted to let you know this is our last workshop, so I'm hopeful we were able to answer all the questions that you guys had. We will be bringing forward our typical packet of information to you guys at the Committee of the Whole on November 4th, so be prepared for that.
All right. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, please let Paula know today. All right, moving on. We have Deja Mitchell with Recode Kent Phase 2 Ordinance, Co-Living. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, or good evening, rather. So I'm Deja Mitchell, long-range planner here with the City of Kent, and I'm here to present on Recode Kent Phase 2, in particular, co-living. So just going over our agenda really quickly here. So I'll first dive into co-living and state legislation around that. Then we'll get into how the City of Kent regulates co-living through communal residences, go through some proposed changes and any differences between the two, as well as a timeline for adoption. And this is just a reminder here that Recode Kent is a multifaceted or multi-phased project. So as you all know, we adopted phase 1 of the project a couple of months ago, and that was adopting 8 state mandates. So now we're on phase 2. As you see, co-living is at the top, but there are other subject matters in phase 2, and then we will be kicking off phase 3 early 2026, and we'll have our kickoff tomorrow night, so I hope to see you all there. So jumping straight into our state legislation surrounding co-living. So the state defines co-living as sleeping units that are independently rented and lockable. So they also have some type of shared facilities, so that could be a shared kitchen or a shared bathroom. The state says that we must allow these co-living units on any lot that allows at least 6 units or more. So that's including mixed-use zones, including lots that allow 6 units based on transit proximity. So if you're within that 1/2 mile walking distance to a major transit stop. And you all may remember in phase 1, we adopted regulations surrounding or allowing lots to move from 4 units up to 6 if they were transit proximate or had some type of affordable housing element to it. So state legislation says that we have to allow co-living on those lots that get 6 units based on transit proximity, but we don't have to allow it on lots that get 6 units based on affordability. So a little confusing there, but just know that we only have to allow it on lots that allow or that have major transit stop proximity. And so this state legislation, or HB 1998, also regulates parking, sleeping unit densities, and also sewer fees. I also want to point out that co-living is not just, living in a house and sharing one lease with a bunch of roommates. Each person, each room has their own lease, and it's their own responsibility. So it's a little different there. So Kent has something similar. So we regulate co-living through communal residences. We state that communal residence is a business operated out of a single-family residential home. These two also have individual rents. Currently, we require a business license and no more than 3 rooms within a home or an accessory dwelling unit to be a communal residence. And these are only allowed in zones that allow single-family homes. So there are zones here are stated. These are our new zones as well. And just some comparison here. So our main 3 comparisons, or differences rather, between the two is that communal residences really focus on building type. So they're only allowed in single-family dwellings or accessory dwelling units, while co-living has no specification for what building type they can go into. Communal residences, as far as location, can only be located in zones that allow single-family dwellings. So those zones I pointed out in the previous slide. While as co-living housing can be permitted on any lot that allows 6+ units. So like I said, mixed-use zones or within that 1/2 mile transit stop proximity. And as far as density, so communal residences, for communal residences rather, 1 house equals 1 dwelling unit with the max of 3 rented rooms per house. Whereas co-living, 1 sleeping unit is equivalent to 1/4 dwelling unit. And we cannot put any extra density minimums on co-living that aren't already applied to multifamily. And density minimums for co-living are based on that underlying zone, whatever underlying zone they're built in. So to combat these differences here, we came up with a tiered system. So we intend on keeping the communal residence naming mechanism. We thought it'd be too confusing to change it up. But instead, we added tiers. So it'll be communal residence tier 1, tier 2. So tier 1 communal residence will retain what we have now for communal residence as far as regulations. So where 5 or less residential units are allowed, it'll be tier 1. Only allowed in single-family dwellings or accessory dwelling units, and a maximum of 3 sleeping units per lot. So pretty much the same as what we have now. Tier 2 is where we would incorporate our state legislation surrounding co-living. So Tier 2 communal residents would only be allowed on lots that allow 6 or more units, and that's inclusive of course, those transit proximate lots, as well as mixed-use zones. They'll be allowed in residential and mixed-use developments, and maximum density will be equal to 4 times the dwelling unit density permitted in that zone. So that's that 1 sleeping unit is equivalent to 1/4 dwelling unit. And in zones where there are no density minimums, building bulk, height, lot coverage, and applicable building code will regulate the amount of sleeping units in that area or that project. And jumping into some other things, so as far as shared amenities and parking requirements, again, Tier 1 communal residence is pretty much the same. So 1 kitchen, 1 bathroom for the 3 max allowable communal residents in a single-family home or an ADU. And for parking, 2 parking spaces per lot. So that's what we have now, aligning with single-family homes. So there's really no change there. Our bigger changes, or our changes in general, are Tier 2 communal residents. So we came up with a couple of ratios. So for kitchens, we're allowing for 1 shared kitchen per 15 sleeping units. And then for bathrooms, 1 bathroom per 6 sleeping units. So we thought these ratios were a good starting point after reviewing what others have adopted. So cities such as SeaTac have also adopted ratios for their co-living or communal residencies in this case. And their code states things such as at least 1 shared kitchen per 15 units, and also at least 1 per floor. However, we will continue to monitor and review state guidance and other adopted code to determine if these ratios will remain a good fit for the city of Kent. So right now, that is what we've landed on. Could change in the future. And as far as parking, so Tier 2 communal residences will align with what the state requires for parking, so 0.25 parking spaces per each co-living sleeping unit, so not a lot there. And for both Tier 1 and Tier 2, no off-street parking is required if you're within that half mile walking distance of a major transit stop. So we kind of already have that now, or we do already have that now with middle housing, so that's not the biggest change there. And that's actually all I have for co-living. So just getting into our timeline here. So we need to have this adopted by December 31st, 2025. So we have a couple briefings and hearings with Land Use and Planning Board, briefing on the 27th, hearing on the 5th of November, and then we'll be back here on November 18th for Committee of the Whole, and hoping for adoption December 9th. So that is all I have, so thank you all. Any questions?
Yes, thank you, Deja. I have a couple of questions actually first. So how many units do we currently have that are considered
communal? Right?
Yeah.
I actually don't know that number. I'll refer to Kristen. Kristen, do you know how many currently we have?
Okay, that's fine. And then the second question is, would each unit, well, I guess the living space, be considered part of our housing numbers, or is it going to be the whole communal unit considered part of our housing numbers? Is it like sleeping 15 in a space, or is it?
Yeah, is that one house or 15?
Yeah.
Resident.
So how does that count for the housing units we have to?
So for calculating later on.
Yeah, for the growth management.
For growth management.
Yeah.
Yes, so these are great questions that we also brought up. I am not a math person, so I'm going to use nice numbers. So when we talk about the Tier 2, 1 sleeping unit, which is the lockable bedroom, counts as a quarter of a dwelling unit. So for every 4 sleeping units within the building, it's 1 dwelling unit. So if you have a 20 sleeping unit building, 20 divided by 4, it would be 5 dwelling units. And so when we report to the state, this is something the state forms don't take into account. They don't think about we will have to work, and one of the requirements we're having is a business license so that we can properly tabulate that. We can look and see how many communal residences we have now. I'm going to guess it's not many. My understanding is this was an issue where it was an issue at one point, especially with communal residences stacking on and doing short-term rentals and group homes and a couple other uses all on one site. And so that's why we initially address this, was to provide some clarity around it. So what we were trying to do is retain that clarity on the lower density, and then on the higher density where the state usurps us, we'll have to follow along with the state.
Ken, how many short-term rentals do we have? That's the other question. But yeah, so anyways, we'll move on. Councilmember Larmer.
So just, I think more for my own curiosity, adult family homes. Where do those fit in here? Is that the tier 1 or the tier 2?
So they wouldn't be either of them. They're their own section of thing. So they're not either co-living or communal housing.
Okay.
Communal residence housing, sorry.
Any other questions or comments? It's a lot of information. Thank you so much. A lot for us to think about and see what land use and planning thinks about. So thank you so much, Jasia.
Yeah, no problem. Have the rest of your night.
All right. Next up, we have Kristen with project update on critical areas ordinance. Welcome.
Good evening, council. I am standing in for Lindsay. You had a full committee of the whole meeting, and so we bumped this to workshop, and she's been really the project manager behind all of this, but I'm here to give you some updates. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about some shifts in our project timelines, updates that we're hearing as we're starting to move forward in our draft plan or draft code updates, and then really discuss some of the results. We had previously talked about our gap analysis and how code needed to be amended. We've learned some additional information since then. So, as you can recall, we discussed the gaps analysis and where we thought we were headed. And before we said, we don't think there's actually that many significant changes. And then we were surprised by one of those very significant changes. And so tonight I'm going to talk with you about, we've had a lot of conversations internally with our ECD permit review staff, as well as with our public works and park staff, both from a policy standpoint, as well as the staff that are on the ground, trimming trees, doing landscape maintenance, and so many other wonderful things, because they're affected by these critical areas ordinances as well. It's not just private property. So some of the things I'm going to highlight, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because they were pretty non-controversial, and they're more things that we're, as a city, happy to be doing, and they're more like cleanups and things that are adding resources for us. So we are definitely adding and updating definitions, clarifying when critical area fencing and signage are required, especially for landslide hazard areas. And then we're adding in some new exemptions for where you may not, public agencies especially may not need to come in and do the full studies and permits. And this allows us to have a little bit more immediate response when there's emerging issues. So for example, removal of invasive species conducted by a public agency. If we have an adopted programmatic plan, it means they don't have to come in for every single different park or different roadway where there's critical areas where there may be a wetland or a stream buffer that they want to remove those species. So it gives it a more programmatic, they do one effort to say this is how we will manage it, and they can come and as long as they're abiding by that and not outside of those bounds, they don't have to come in every single time. Another thing is the removal of hazard trees on public property. This was something that was in the best available science requirements. It's really different if a private property owner has a hazard tree versus something where we may have in a right-of-way or in a park where it may be affecting life, safety, and property in a different way than a private property. And so that was something else we're adding in. And then activities for site cleanup for unauthorized uses, especially for when there's degradation or encampments within critical areas, as long as there's not electronic or mechanical land disturbing equipment, helping so that we can stop the damage from going further and getting in there quickly to help stop the damage and remediate it. And then lastly, we have found through some of our conversations with our parks colleagues that there's other jurisdictions that encourage non-impactful uses within their buffers, especially when you think of like trails and activity spaces that are along streams where there's public enjoyment and benefit, but it's done in such a way that's really low impact. Our code was vague on that, and so really calling it out explicitly is something that we encourage as long as it's done with low impact. Wetlands, there's a couple significant changes here. One is we currently require a 1-year report for 5 years, so 5 different reports for monitoring after a project is permitted. And the best available science says we really don't need to do that. We can do it every other year. And so that's significant cost savings, both on the applicant to hire consultants, as well as for us on staff time with our permit loads. Also, just adopting as amended language. The state frequently will make updates to best available science. One example is the wetlands category ratings. That changed between the last time we did our updates and now, and so we had to do some extra hoops to jump through in order to stay up to date, and so just allowing us that as amended, so if it changes, we can adopt it into our processes. For geologically hazard areas, this is one where we've had miscommunication or misinterpretations between various parties regarding these hazard areas. And so that's typically steep slopes, unstable slopes. We are clarifying that the 15-foot building setback line is in addition to the buffer. So you can't build a building right at the edge of that 15 or 50-foot buffer for that steep slope, because otherwise to build you would be encroaching into the buffer, which would be on a steep slope area that wouldn't be safe. So clarifying that we need an extra 15 feet. We're also just cleaning up some of the words and revising our standards to align with some of our surrounding jurisdictions. For critical aquifer recharge areas, the City of Kent Public Works Group did a really substantial wellhead protection program update in 2022. And so a lot of this is just pulling in and showing our work into our development code and then making sure that the requirements for reports are also listed, not hidden in a report that Public Works did, but also tying it back because it's a new report, tying it into our code for the development community or people that are proposing development to see what those requirements are. Where we anticipate significant changes, and this was a little bit of a shock for our staff, and I will say this was a shock for most cities and counties throughout Western Washington, aside from very rural areas, is the changes to how we do stream management. So we right now currently classify type 1, 2, and 3 streams. Type 1 are shoreline streams. There's no changes at the state level on that. For type 2F, it's now called type F streams. Previously, our type 2 streams were just fish-bearing streams for salmon. And type 3 streams would have been fish-bearing streams that aren't salmon containing, or other types of streams. The state now has, they group any stream with fish in it as a type F. So it doesn't matter whether it has salmon or not. And then they have these other type N streams, which means non-fish bearing, and they have differing designations. They also are using something called a riparian management zone. So it's not just the stream itself, but it's the stream plus the buffers within it, saying that the soils, the vegetation all contribute to the quality of the stream health, which then contributes to the quality of fish health, which contributes to quality of orcas. So seeing it really as a system that's integrated. So that wasn't so much of a surprise to us. We knew that the typology and namings were going to be different. What did become different was what the state's recommended guidance on these zones are. So they have 2 different ways that we can classify it. One is based on a standard buffer, similar to what we've always done. The other is based on a site potential tree height. We have looked at site potential tree height, and the average site potential tree height in the city of Kent would be 180 to over 250 feet. So that means anywhere within that, if a tree could be that height planted by a stream, no development could happen within that. And the idea is that that tree could provide shade within 250 feet at some point in the day. That is something that for rural areas that don't have a lot of development, agricultural lands can make a lot more sense. In Kent and most of the urbanized areas, that excludes entire parcels from what can be developed. So what you see right now on the screen is our current buffer. So right now we have shorelines, again, that's not going to change. And then we have this type F, so previously we were 100 feet, and then type N and fish-bearing streams that weren't salmon were 40 feet. The state is saying for the type N streams, a minimum of 100 feet, and their statements for that are that it's, again, not just the shade, it's not just the stream, it's also, you need 100 feet for the water, for any pollution to filter through back to the stream that it's feeding into. So that was our first shock. The second shock was that the state does not specifically have in their guidance any sort of distance other than saying use site potential tree height. Site potential tree height can be $3,000 to $5,000 per study per site and highly variable. So when we talked with neighboring cities, when we talked with the community, when we talked with Master Builders Association, they said that makes development a complete confusion. It adds a lot of costs and uncertainty. So they said we would like to see a standard buffer and have options for averaging or mitigating within that. So we are starting these conversations where we're really looking at what other jurisdictions are doing. Fish and Wildlife staff have said they'd like us to see a 200 minimum foot buffer for type F. We're very concerned about the potential for that. One of the major reasons is we're dealing with multiple state requirements. So we're being told accommodate 10,200 new housing units, enable middle housing, and also in some cases more than triple if we were to go up to 200, triple to 4 times your buffer for streams. And so we are in the process of really examining what these impacts are right now, and that has taken us a little bit longer of a pause than we haven't paused. We have a little bit more conversations that we need to have in really analysis. So what you're seeing right now is hot off the books conversations that we just got back. We need to do more digging into it. But if we were to go from 100 to 150, so that would be not, it would be a marginal step versus the full 200. It would be adding another 25% of land area compared to what already is excluded from buffers and development. So that is a significant increase when we're talking about our buildable lands. There's some conversations happening right now too about concerns about what that means from a legal standpoint from takings of private property development rights. And so we are in a deep analysis phase. I also want to highlight we had early conversations. This was previous critical areas ordinance updates when we analyzed our industrial valley. We have something called the valley overlay where those areas right now have 50 feet buffers and they require restoration of the buffer if you're going to be touching land and development. That's something that we intend to keep and it's something that we anticipate some future conversations on, but we again are tasked with we have a regional growth center there for manufacturing and industrial lands. We have really high growth rate targets for that area. It's an area of regional significance and statewide significance. So again, we're trying to fit all of these mandates. Unfortunately, the state seems to have many mandates without talking to each other or making them work together, and it's leaving cities in a lot of uncertainty of what do we do. And so this is where we're having real conversations of what this would mean, because our city's comprehensive plan and our EIS was based on the best available science, based on what we were assuming was going forward. So we are not alone. Last night we had a meeting with all of the South King County cities to see where they were headed as well. And so we are continuing. This is just a quick example to see, if you look at the circled in green, you can see the yellow right now. That's a 40-foot buffer. If we apply the 100-foot buffer, it entirely covers those parcels. So they would lock into time any development. And we had conversations with Fish and Wildlife and said, these are fenced yards, they're away from the trees. Can we really not allow ADUs here? Can we not allow garages? And they said, nope, you wouldn't be allowed to because you should be planting a tree, or if you did development, you'd be creating point source pollution. And so there's a lot of conversations that we're having to say, but this is an urbanized area already. And there's ways that now with our stormwater requirements, development is actually doing a better job at cleaning water than old older developments. And so with the way the evolution of stormwater requirements and all these other requirements are, we feel that there's science and that what the best available science supported by the state is really intended for rural undeveloped areas and not for urbanized areas. And so these are just showing examples. You can see the 100 versus the 150-foot buffer in blue there, where it takes out, again, entire parcels. So this is to say we are exploring options, and we will be coming to you with our recommendation based on meeting several state requirements and the best available science. But because of this, we need more time. And so the consequences for not adopting by the end of the year, the state says in order to sign new grants going forward, we have to have an updated critical areas ordinance. However, we can apply for those grants, we just can't sign to start the work on them. And so we're not proposing a long time for delay. We're proposing, by the end of Q1, if not sooner, of 2026. But I wanted to inform you of where we're at, and also just let you know kind of the surprise that we're getting from the state with, again, unfunded mandates to make these things work. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Kristen. Councilmember Michaud, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Council President. This goes back to the beginning. What are the exemptions for permits?
So there are several either exemptions or allowed alterations that we currently don't have. And so these would explicitly call out allowing a public agency who has a programmatic plan that they've already adopted to remove invasive species, or to go in and clean up sites due to unauthorized human activity without having to get the permit first, so that we can, the intent being we can stop the further degradation of the environment versus waiting another couple months to get the study to stop it.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Fincher.
So if they're allowed to clean it up themselves, how do we know that it's really been cleaned? Say dirt had to be removed or material. How do we know? Do we go back in afterwards?
I'm sorry, I missed that first.
Oh, I'm sorry. So how do we know if they were allowed to clean it themselves, how would we know that it had actually been done and done satisfactorily?
Yeah, so we are looking specifically for public agencies. So us, King County, Metro, whoever is a public agency, and a lot of times we're saying they have to have a programmatic plan. So this is used frequently in Seattle and King County already, where they say these are the practices for parks maintenance or for vegetation maintenance. And they've said, we agree that these are the standards that we'll use, and then they hold themselves to that standard. And it has been approved as a best practice. And so it's giving ourselves the tools as a public agency or other partnering agencies to be able to do that work. We would still require private properties to come in, because they don't have trained arborists on staff. They don't have, they may say, I don't like this tree and I think it's a hazard, when it doesn't. There's extensive criteria for evaluating that our staff know how to utilize.
Good.
Thank you. All right, any other questions or comments? Thank you so much, Kristen.
Thank you.
I think that is all the questions. All right. With that, we are adjourned until 7 o'clock.